الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم الأمين ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. ببركة إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد طب القلوب ودوائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا نور الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا جد الحسن والحسين. Most honorable, respectable ulama kiram, sadati kiram, Sanakhan Mustafa, and my honorable, respectable brothers, elders, sisters, mothers in Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
First and foremost, I am thankful and grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has allowed me this opportunity once again to be present in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be present in this beautiful masjid. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost allows all of us to take benefit from this gathering, and I also pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to act upon what we learn from here today, and we use what we take from this gathering inshallah to reform our lives and to make better positive changes in our lives. وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ. I'm also grateful to Janab Alama Ramzan Riza Sahib, Hafizahullah Ta'ala, who was on my case for a very long time, and I also apologize to him as well that due to a busy schedule, studies and so on and so forth, I was unable to make time. But Alhamdulillah, it is my honor that I am present here today in the presence of Ali Nabi Awlad Ali Qibla Sayyid Sabiluddin Sabir Rahmani Sahib. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless him. From a very young age, we used to listen to him on TV, we used to listen to him in Mahafil Masajid gatherings as well. So Alhamdulillah, it's an honor. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve Qibla Shah Sahib. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant our youngsters who are here today, and generally our youngsters who recite Naat, the ability to recite it with the adab, with the etiquettes that we see Qibla Shah Sahib recite with for many years. And I'm very happy to actually be in a gathering where brothers like Ashraf Bhai recite with such ikhlas, with khulus, and these are our role models that we should be having for our youngsters, not the others that we see on our screens with funky haircuts and funky clothes and so on and so forth. So that's not the topic. Inshallah, we will discuss that some other day. But we need to make sure that we continue to give our platforms to young Sana Khan like this, Qibla Qari Tanveer Sahib, Hafiz Qasim Sahib, and others that are here, so that they continue to recite in a beautiful manner, and our youngsters are inspired and take inspiration from this as well, inshallah ar-Rahman. And I also would like to apologize to everyone. I don't usually sit on a chair. I'm not a big alim or peer or anything like that. I've got an injury due to which I can't sit on the floor. Otherwise, I feel really bad that there is a sayyid and I am sitting on the chair. But I do apologize for that as well, inshallah rahman. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our attendance, inshallah. Just a few things I'd like to mention. The young Sahibzadas have mentioned a lot in a very few lines about the importance of the month of Ramadan. But I just like to mention a few things for us to reflect over and for us to ponder over. Where we have time for so many things on a day-to-day basis, one thing we forget to do, and one thing a lot of us are neglectful of, is actually self-reflection and self-contemplation and actually taking hisab of ourselves. A very famous saying that we have heard from the ulama is hasibu qabla an tuhasabu, that take account of yourselves reflect over your own actions, reflect over your own state, before that day comes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes hisab of you, He takes your account. And so this is why it's very important, especially in days leading up to the month of Ramadan, that we in excess make sure that we are accounting ourselves for what we do, we reflect over what we do. And our mashayikh and our teachers tell us a very easy and simple way, that every night before you retire to bed, before you go to sleep, just for half a minute, sit down and reflect on the actions that you have done throughout the day. Look at the good that you have done. Look at the bad that you have done. And the bad that you have done, ask Allah to forgive you, reform renew your iman, recite the kalima shahada, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. And whatever good you may have done, then ask Allah to continue to give you the ability to do so. But if we don't self-reflect, if we don't do hisab of ourselves, then a lot of us will find ourselves in the state that we as a Muslim ummah as a whole are in today. A lot of us talk about the hypocrisy on the media that we see today, how some wars are mentioned and some aren't mentioned, how certain events are covered and certain events aren't covered. But before we point a finger at the media and before we point a finger at others, we have to actually ask ourselves, how much of Islam do we act upon that we have a right to make such complaints? How much of our deen that our Rasul Habib alayhi salatu salam gave us do we actually act upon ourselves? And so this is why it's very important that we reflect over our a'mal, we contemplate over our a'mal. The topic of this gathering, as well as being a gathering of the night of the Masjid sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is welcoming Ramadan. How should we welcome Ramadan? How should we prepare for Ramadan? Talks can be given hours upon hours. Ulama have written books upon books on this specific topic, but just a couple of things that I like to mention so that we understand a few things about this topic, inshallah rahman. First and foremost, in the Quran, when Allah talks about the month of Ramadan and when He tells us about this concept of siyam and fasting being fard and obligatory upon us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the reason of it as well. Everything that we do in our lives must have a purpose, must have a reason. And the reason and purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us for the fasting in the month of Ramadan is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. The reason why we have been told to fast, the reason why we have been told to abstain from food and drink and marital relations from the time of suhoor until iftar, what is the reason for that? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes halal things, things which are permissible normally. You are allowed to eat halal food, you are allowed to drink halal mashrubat, right? But Allah makes what is halal generally haram for you during the hours of fasting. Why does He do that? And why is He testing us with this? He tells us to do this, He instructs us to do this, so that if in the month of Ramadan we are capable of abstaining from halal things during a certain amount of time, then we should be able to, other than the month of Ramadan and also in the month of Ramadan, refrain from actions which are haram in essence. If we are able to control ourselves over permissible things, then we should also be able to control ourselves generally from those things which are impermissible. But shaitan plays a very cunning trick with us all, and we all befool to it, we all are guilty of it, and we all don't realize that we have fallen into the trap of shaitan. And so what happens throughout the year, the concept of our youngsters as well, and you will see this, when the month of Ramadan comes, we will see faces in the masjid that we never see usually. And this is a good thing, alhamdulillah. And just as a side note, when you see those faces, don't scare them away. When you see those faces, don't say to them, "Tu raat nahi pul ke aa gaya masjid." Right? When you see those faces, don't say to him, "Tu kithe aa gaya masjid." Right? Rather, when he comes to the masjid, welcome him with a smile. And understand that how much right you have over the masjid. The one who has a beard and is a Haji Sahib and is a Namazi Sahib, that same person has the same right over the masjid as well. And so we will see that youngsters will come in the masjid. People who generally don't come in the masjid, they will come. And after the month of Ramadan finishes, or let me say when the moon wars begin, prior to the moon sighting and so on and so forth, our youngsters are ready. Cars are hired out, plans are made, so on and so forth, and the rest of it. We all know, everyone that's here, especially you've got Ladypool Road, just a couple of yards away, we all know what happens. But why does this happen? Because we have built a perception that in the month of Ramadan, we will be able to do whatever we want. And if we understand actually, this is not only after the month of Ramadan and prior, but we are hearing on a year-to-year basis, and this is increasing annually, that our Muslim youth, our youngsters, and our people who claim to be Muslims, in the month of Ramadan, they are committing crimes during Taraweeh time, during Iftari time, during the night. And so we need to now question ourselves, how does this happen and how do we stop this? To stop this and to improve ourselves in our a'mal, it is necessary that other than the month of Ramadan, we are also trying our best to follow the Sharia to the best of our ability. When we act upon the ahkam of Sharia outside the month of Ramadan, then doing so within the month of Ramadan makes it easier as well.